Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. Three pretty good games tonight. None of these games were blowouts like we've seen a lot of these games turn into. We had a great first couple days of the playoffs, and then all of a sudden everything kind of turned into blowouts with a couple close games here and there. And for two series that have been pretty competitive in Knicks Hawks and Clippers Mavericks, this is kind of expected. But even with Celtics Nets, a game where, to be honest, I thought this series was almost over. I thought it was a sweep, and the Celtics, shout out to them bouncing back, Tatum dropping 50. That's the second game we're going to talk about in this video. But I do want to start with Clippers Mavericks. I tweeted this out earlier. This is by far the series I am most excited about, the series that I look forward to the most, mainly because of how competitive it is and how many storylines there are. The rise of Luka Doncic, the potential fall of the Los Angeles Clippers. Can the Clippers get past this hump? They tried to face the Mavericks. They tanked the last two games of the season to face the Dallas Mavericks to avoid the Lakers, and now is that bouncing back on them? Luka, like I said, playing like a superstar, a top 5 player. There's just so many different dynamics and storylines, and Twitter is always super fun when this series is on, so these are always the games I'm most looking forward to, and tonight didn't disappoint. Another great game with the Los Angeles Clippers, specifically Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. They're big two, the two guys that they sacrificed a billion picks to Oklahoma City to bring in to the team, showed up. They played exactly how they needed to play, and they said, we are not going home. We are not going down 3-0, a deficit that no NBA team has ever come back from in the playoffs. We're going to win this game, and that's exactly what they did. 118-108. I do want to give a quick shout out to a guy on the Mavericks. Luka Doncic, as I just said, has been playing like a top 5 player, a superstar type guy in these playoffs, and he continued to do so. 44-9-9. Really just the only blemish on this game and on his series as a whole has been his free throw shooting. I don't know what it is. It's like a LeBron James type thing where he can hit the most difficult shots in the world, but for some reason can't hit free throws. I'm convinced if Luka Doncic took his free throws from the 3-point line, he would be like a 90% free throw shooter. I don't know what it is. Maybe he needs to stand a little bit further back, but he always like misses in the same spot. He always just barely tips like that back rim and it bounces right back out to him, but someone always like from the box always pops in and steals the rebound before it can get out to him, but he always misses in the same spot, so I wonder if there's some mechanic he can fix there. Either way, he's got to hit more of those free throws. There are a lot of clutch situations where he needed to hit those, but you can't complain about that too much when he dropped 44-9-9, which is almost half of his team's points. He was about 10 off of scoring half of his team's points. This game was really on their role players. Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been averaging over 20 points per game this series, only had 12 tonight. Jalen Brunson really showed up. He's another guy who deserves a lot of credit with 14 points. I think he's a future 6-man of the year type guy. He's a guy who I think should have been in more consideration this season, and I'm glad people are seeing how good he is. Second round pick out of Villanova. Seems like those Villanova guys always seem to show out no matter when you pick them. They're always just safe bets. They're always going to be like solid NBA players. They won't usually turn into like superstar type guys, but they're always solid NBA role players at least, and I think Jalen Brunson's a great example of that. He's important to this team, and he's going to be important going forward as long as the Mavericks are willing to pay him. Really, Kristaps Porzingis, he was the reason the Mavericks lost this game. In addition to the Clippers making some good adjustments, which I will talk about. I came really hard at Tyronn Lue last video, and maybe he watched it with the way that he adjusted a bunch of things, and I do want to give him shout-outs for those adjustments, as well as talking about Kawhi and Paul George. But first, I need to rip into Kristaps Porzingis real quick. They are paying you a max contract to be their 7-3 center or power forward, whichever position he wants to play at whatever time he's on the floor. They're paying you to be 7-3. They're paying you to grab rebounds. They're paying you to hit threes. They're paying you to get big and play down low sometimes. And he doesn't. Kristaps Porzingis, I wish I had that height. If I had that height, I'd be in the NBA, and I promise you, I would have the greatest work ethic, and I'd be a great NBA player if I was 7'3". Kristaps Porzingis plays like a shooting guard at 7'3". Facundo Campazzo of the Denver Nuggets, if you've seen him, he's about 5'11", is averaging more rebounds in the playoffs than Kristaps Porzingis is. Kristaps is 7'3". He's just not getting in there. He's got to be better. The Mavericks paid him a maximum contract to be Luka Doncic's co-star. They didn't pay him to be a role player. They didn't pay him to be all right. They didn't pay him to sometimes be maybe a fragment of the all-star he was at one point. They paid him to be a secondary star. They paid him to be a perennial all-star, a guy that could come in with Luka Doncic, pair great with him, provide him some spacing, some rebounding, and occasionally get down low, fight in the trenches, and get up a tough bucket in the post. That's what they paid him for, and he's not doing any of that. 9 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists in 34 minutes. And there was about a million times where he had a look in the post, and he instead just turned around and shot a fadeaway. He's just not trying to back anyone down. He's not even making an effort at it. And he's not super strong. That's clear by looking at him, by his inability to back down a lot of these guys, but he's not even trying. He's just trying to turn around and shoot over guys, and he's unable to do that most of the time. In addition, they know he's not going to post up. They know he's going to just hold the ball there with his back against the defender for a couple seconds and then turn around and shoot a fadeaway. So defenders are just running off of their man because they know Kristaps isn't looking to back anyone down and get down low to kick out to someone. They know that he's going to shoot that jumper, so they just leave their man, and they kept stripping him. He got stripped like 4 or 5 times, it felt like, tonight. I'm not sure if it actually was that many, but it felt like half the time he got the ball, he was turning it over somehow. And that was kind of what happened to the Mavericks at the end of this game. Kristaps had a couple bad plays. Maxi Kleber had a really bad turnover late in the game, kind of when it was a little bit out of reach, but it was still a shot at winning the game, but that turnover really kind of sealed it. There was just bad plays. Josh Richardson, only 4 points tonight. The role players really didn't show up. I wish Luka Doncic had a second star. If you gave Luka any other all-star in the league, or just any all-star in the league, replaced Kristaps with that guy, this team would be scary as hell. Because all Luka needs is that second guy. That's all he needs, a second reliable guy. And this Mavericks team is scary as hell. If Kristaps can become that, cool, good for the Mavericks. But I'm not sure if he can or not. Ever since he had that injury, he just hasn't looked the same. He doesn't look like he has any willingness to try and back people down. He's just going to keep shooting 30-footers, and sometimes they go in, and when his three-pointers go in, they're really smooth and they look really nice. The problem is they don't go in that often. And for a guy who is relied on to be a secondary star, he's not at all consistent enough for what the Mavericks need. He needs to step up, and the role players need to get back to playing the way they were for the Mavericks to continue to play in this series the way that they have so far. But the Clippers made a statement tonight. They said, we're not going to give up. We're not going to die. We're going to play how kind of the role players for the Clippers played like the Mavericks role players have played all series. They stepped up. In addition to their stars really stepping up, Kawhi Leonard's been great all series. Paul George has been kind of here and there. But tonight were probably their 2 best games of the series. Kawhi Leonard, 36, 8 and 3, super efficient. So many great plays at the end of the game. It felt like every time Kawhi Leonard came down the court at the end of the game, he was scoring or he was getting to the free throw line. He was doing something on every possession. He took the challenge of guarding Luka Doncic at the end of the game, which I think they need to do more. Put more of him on there because they put Rondo on him sometimes. And Rondo had a couple good defensive plays, but most of the time Luka would just back him all the way down to the basket because he's 6'7". Rondo's not 6'7". Kawhi needs to take that challenge more, and he started to at the end of the game. Zubac only played 11 minutes, but he had some really good minutes. Some great box out, some great contests at the end of the game. Batum with 8.6 rebounds, 16 from Reggie Jackson. Paul George with 29, 7 and 4, and he was really efficient too, playing some good defense as well. This was Paul George's best game of the series. This was one of his best games in the playoffs as a Clipper. He was super impactful. It might not be his best game statistically, but in terms of on-court impact, Paul George was impactful on every single play he was on the court tonight. And that's what they need him to do. That's what they're paying him a max contract to do. That's what they gave up like 7 years of first-round picks for him to do. And that's what he did. And the Clippers won. Because when he and Kawhi Leonard are on, it's tough to stop this team, especially if the role players step up. Like I said, Reggie Jackson, who was inserted into the starting lineup today, 16 points. Reggie Jackson had a really good game. Patrick Beverley only played 6 minutes, and honestly, I think that's what you need to do. Patrick Beverley wasn't hitting his shots. He was kind of just annoying Luka, and that's what he did tonight. He got Luka a technical foul, but he's kind of just getting up in people's faces and not doing too much. If anything, he was kind of firing up the Mavericks the past couple of games, so honestly, probably a pretty good idea to put him on the bench. Rondo, good game, 6, 4, and 8. He had a couple good possessions on Luka as well, and he hit a tough basket towards the end of the game that helped them pull away. This was just an all-around good game. Marcus Morris, 15 points. He sank 3 corner threes in the fourth quarter that really sunk the Mavericks. Every time the Mavericks got a little bit of momentum, they gave up a corner 3 to Marcus Morris, and he sunk it. Unfortunately for him, on the last one, he did like a finger gun celebration towards the Mavericks bench, which you can't do in the NBA, really, and he ended up getting a technical foul, and then he ended up fouling out, so his game ended a little bit earlier than he would have liked to, but it didn't end up mattering. This was a big statement from the Clippers. Like I said last game, the Clippers had been getting embarrassed in this series. They said, we want the Mavericks, and they were getting run off the court by this white boy wearing number 77, at 22 years old, too. Playing like a top 5 player. Luka has been the best player in this series. And so if Luka's going to continue to be the best player, you need Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to easily be the second and third best, as well as maybe a role player or two to be the 4th or 5th. That's what you need. because the way that Luka's been playing, he's been the best player, and he's going to continue to be the best player in this series. Whether or not he's better than Kawhi Leonard is a debate you can have with your friends on Twitter or whatever, but ultimately Luka's been the best player in this series. But I do need to give credit to Tyronn Lue, who made a bunch of adjustments. Like I said, Patrick Beverley did not play that much, and that was a good thing. They played some zone in this game even. They did a better job of running those three-point shooters off the three-point line and making them shoot inside. The Mavericks shot better from three tonight than they did from inside the arc, because that's what the Mavericks do. They rain threes on you. If you give them open looks, and that's how the game started. The Clippers were down, I think it was like 30-11 to start the game, because they were giving up those open threes, and they quickly adjusted. Tyronn Lue called a timeout and said, hey guys, look, this is what we've got to do. This is the crap I gave him last video. I said he was not stopping them, being like, hey, here are the adjustments we need to make, and he wasn't making any coaching decisions. And then he made them this game. And look what happened. They won. Because they're a good team. They're a really good team when they play well, when they play together, and when Tyronn Lue makes adjustments. Terence Mann played 19 minutes tonight. He had not been playing very much throughout the whole series. He was a plus 18 in those 19 minutes. 6 rebounds, 4 points, 2 assists. Not great statistically, but he played great defense. He had some great box outs. He scored a couple of times. He got some rebounds. He did what he needed to do. He was the guy they needed to put out there more. He should be out there more than Patrick Beverley. And that's exactly what Tyronn Lue did. Good for Tyronn Lue. Good for him making adjustments. Good for the Clippers taking this as taking kind of the tweets and what everyone was saying about them as kind of like a personal thing and deciding, hey, we're going to come in, we're not going to be swept, and we're going to win this third game. That's what they did. Now, they've got to win game 4, because going down 3-1, I don't know if that's surmountable with Luka Doncic on the other team. So they've got to come in, they've got to win this game 4. It's not over yet. This was probably the biggest game in Clippers history up to this point. Because going down 3-0 is a death sentence in basketball. In basketball, you really don't ever, it's pretty much impossible, honestly, to come back from a 3-0 deficit in basketball because of how much it relies on star power, especially when Luka Doncic, like I said, has played like the best player in this series. So this is what they had to do. They came in, they did it. We'll see if they can replicate in game 4. But for right now, these are the Clippers that I know. These are the Clippers that I saw and who I made a video about them a couple months ago saying that I thought the Clippers were better than last year. I thought they were championship contenders. This is the team I saw back then. If they continue to show up, they can be those contenders. They just can't fall back into what they had been doing. If they get complacent, if they get this one win and kind of lose that fire, Mavericks are going to take game 4 and this series is going to be all but over. So they can't get complacent. It doesn't look like they're going to, but we'll see. We'll see. They've done it before. Celtics Nets. This was a weird game. Similarly to the Clippers Mavericks game, the Nets went up 19-4 in this first quarter. And it kind of looked like, oh, this is going to be like, because I said in the last video, and I said this before the series, I thought this was a sweep. I said, okay, Brooklyn kind of just outmatches the Celtics. I really don't see a way that the Celtics are going to be able to keep up with them. I think this is a sweep. And it kind of had the look of that. James Harden started going off. James Harden had 41, 7, and 10. And Kevin Durant had 39, 9, and 1. If I told you those stats against this Celtics team without Jason Tatum or without Jaylen Brown, you would think that the Celtics got blown out, right? 6-point win for the Boston Celtics. Down 2-1 in this series. I don't think this means that the Nets are screwed or anything. I don't think this means the Celtics are going to come back in this series. I still think it's going to be a 5, maybe 6 game series. I still think it's going to be a 5-game series, but what this game really shows is that the Nets are vulnerable. Jason Tatum himself showed the weaknesses of the Brooklyn Nets. One of the main things, we've talked about their inability to guard bigs, but also those really adept scoring wings, because Joe Harris isn't a great defender. And Kyrie Irving, if he gets on the switch, got abused tonight. He got destroyed. And he didn't have a good game offensively at all. He was really inefficient. Only 16 points tonight. They needed him badly tonight, and he just wasn't there, really. They missed Jeff Green a lot tonight because Jeff Green is a guy that can help kind of shut down those scoring wings a little bit. But without Jeff Green, Jason Tatum's a problem. Because Jason Tatum put up 50 points in a playoff game. 56 and 7. First player ever to put up 50 in a 50 in a postseason, a regular season, and a play-in game. So that's a fun stat for you. But the Brooklyn Nets just couldn't stop him. They couldn't do anything. He would seek out Kyrie Irving, he would get him on a switch, and he would abuse him every single time. In addition, Bruce Brown couldn't stop him. Kevin Durant couldn't stop him. I think Kevin Durant's injury didn't affect his offensive game, but Kevin Durant's defense is nowhere near the level of what we saw. There were some times where in Golden State, he would flash as a great defensive player. He had a couple of those moments where it's like, oh my God, look at Kevin Durant. Look at the defense he's playing. And now he feels like he's kind of an average to sometimes a negative on that end. He just doesn't feel like he has the quickness to keep up with Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum hit multiple like quick pull-up jumpers that Kevin Durant just wasn't ready for. He just didn't have the quickness. He didn't have the reaction time to stop Jason Tatum on some of those shots. And you can't really stop Jason Tatum on those shots a lot of the time. He's kind of perfected that. He has a really high release. He's got a super long wingspan. Jason Tatum looks like a 7-footer out there sometimes with how tall he is and how lengthy his arms are. He just looks like a freak of nature out there sometimes. And he's a guy that I think is a future MVP of this league. So I'm not surprised that he dropped 50. He's been doing this all season. I'm not surprised, especially against the Nets team that, like I said, has problems stopping scoring wings. And ultimately, I don't think this means the Celtics are going to come back. I don't think this means they're going to win the series. I don't think this means the Nets are screwed. But what it shows is the weaknesses of the Nets and that the Nets are vulnerable. I know they have Kevin Durant. I know they have Kyrie Irving. I know that they have James Harden, but they're vulnerable. This is a team that could lose to Milwaukee. They definitely could lose to Milwaukee, especially when you factor in that Milwaukee tomorrow has the opportunity to get a sweep. And this game means that the Nets are guaranteed to play at least 2 more games. Maybe even 3. Who knows? Maybe Jason Tatum drops 70 on another night. But at least 2 more games. And if the Bucks are sitting there chilling on their couch watching the Nets play, they're getting all this rest time. Giannis gets to rest up. You give Chris Middleton, Jrue Holiday, all these different guys time to rest, chill out. Even if they sweep the Miami Heat, it's still a very physical series, and playoff series do take a lot out of you. And so getting this opportunity to chill, rest, wait for the Nets to have to play you, that's big. That's big for the Milwaukee Bucks. So the Nets really could not afford to lose this game. They really did not want to lose this game. Jason Tatum just decided they should. And credit to him, because I tweeted this out earlier, but the Celtics very easily could have just said, we're done, we're going to die. Brad Stevens said it himself. This is one of the most talented teams he's seen in a while. And the Celtics, without Jaylen Brown, they just looked dead in the water after the first 2 games. And they didn't quit. And I'm very impressed, because they just could have. They could have just given up. And Jason Tatum said no. Evan Fournier had 17. Tristan Thompson with a 19-13 double-double. Robert Williams, who had been dominant in the first couple games, didn't even play tonight. Marcus Smart with 23, 3, and 6. He also took a charge on Kevin Durant at the end that they said wasn't a charge. It was a charge. It was definitely a charge. Even after review, they should have called that a charge. Kemba Walker was bad tonight. 6 and 8 with 3 points. Super inefficient. Didn't matter. Celtics won. Yeah, Brooklyn's not invincible. I know they have these 3 great players, 2 top 5, 6, 7, wherever you want to put them players, and Kyrie Irving, who's a top 15 player. It might not be enough. Who knows? I'm really excited for Brooklyn, Milwaukee. This game, more than anything I've seen from the Nets all season, proved to me that they're vulnerable. Because people were saying on Twitter, like, oh, it took a Jason Tatum 50-point game and Marcus Smart scoring 23 and Fournier 17 and Thompson 19 to hardly beat the Brooklyn Nets, whatever. Okay, but Kevin Durant had 39. James Harden had a 41 near triple-double. And they lost. It's possible. It's not impossible, especially when you have a guy like Jrue Holiday who can try and shut down Kyrie Irving, similarly to the way that Marcus Smart gave him problems tonight. Also, I think this game shows how much of a necessity James Harden is to this team. If James Harden wasn't on this team, I think they would be guaranteed losing to the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round. Kyrie and Kevin Durant were not enough for this team, especially without Spencer Dinwiddie, who is out with injury still. James Harden is not a luxury. He's a necessity for this roster. He's their most important player. You can argue with me on that in the comment section below, but James Harden's our most important player. Finally, we'll move on to Knicks Hawks, which I think is just kind of a showcase of why it's important to have a go-to scorer in the playoffs, why you need someone who can get you buckets. Julius Randle, quite honestly, has been awful in this series. He had 14 tonight, 11-2, and he shot, I believe it was 2 for 12. Or no, it was 2 for 15 at the end of the game. He shot 2 for 15. He's shooting about 25, I think it's even under that now, percent for this series, from the field. Not from 3, from the field. About 25%. Can't do that. That can't be your all-star player. Julius Randle's been great. He's had a great season, and I think he's just kind of jittery. The Hawks are doing a great job of making Julius Randle do what he did all season, which is take tough shots. The problem is they're not falling now. Those tough shots aren't always going to fall, especially when you're in a high-intensity playoff environment for the first time in Julius Randle's case. You want to be getting some easy looks here and there to kind of get you in rhythm. I think he's taken 3 easy looks maybe all series. The Hawks are making life really tough for him, and the problem is he keeps forcing it because he is their go-to scorer, and they don't have many options outside of him. Their main scorer in this series has been Derrick Rose, and Derrick Rose he's cool and all, but he can't be your leading scorer on a playoff team at this point in his career. If he's your number one option on a playoff team at this point in his career, your team is losing in the first round. That's just kind of the way it is at this point. Derrick Rose, like I said, he's been great, 36-5 tonight. Incredible game from him. Their second leading scorer was Julius Randle, who had 14 and shot 2 for 15. RJ Barrett as well is really struggling. He's a young guy. Young guys sometimes struggle in these playoff environments, and the Hawks, like I said, are just making the Knicks take really, really tough shots. The Hawks run, they gun, they make it difficult to stop them from three. They had a great game. Trae Young is just built for the playoffs. Trae Young is a playoff player, 21 and 14 tonight. But this was an all-around effort from the Hawks. And this is something that I talked about in a previous video, how the Hawks have so many different options, and the Knicks have like one and a half. They should have two if Julius Randle was showing up, but he's not really showing up. The Hawks had DeAndre Hunter with 11, John Collins with 14, Clint Capella with 13, Bogdan Bogdanovic with 15, Trae Young with 21, 12 for Gallo, 10 for Kevin Huerter. Seven guys in double digits, and Lou Williams had 9. So almost 8. Everyone who played double-digit minutes outside of Lou Williams had over 10 points, or had 10 or more points. You can't do that. You can't give that up if you're the Knicks, especially if you're a team like the Knicks that can't score. They hang their hat on defense. You can't be giving up that many points to all those different guys if you can't score. They only gave up 105. The problem is they scored 94. They're playing good defense. They just can't get any buckets of their own. And that's ultimately, I think, why the Hawks win this series, why I picked the Hawks to win this series. The Knicks just don't have a go-to scorer most of the time. Julius Randle was that all season, but he made a lot of tough shots. And when a team in the playoffs is focusing you down for a 7-game series, life gets really difficult. You need multiple scoring options. As a Thunder fan, I have seen this happen before. Going into that playoff series when Russell Westbrook won his MVP against the Houston Rockets, we had Russell Westbrook as our only scoring option. Our second guy was like Victor Oladipo, and he was not very good in that series. Our second best scorer in that series was like Andre Roberson. That's how bad it was. And you know what the Rockets did? Because you have a 7-game series, you just put in a game plan in place, and you just continue to execute it over the course of that series. And if they shut down Russell Westbrook, they were like, okay, you beat us alone. You can't do it. It's about you can't win in a 1v5, and that's kind of what Derrick Rose was doing on offense. He had 30 points and they scored 94 as a team. You can't do that. If you want to win in the playoffs, you need multiple guys who can score, and that's just not what they were doing tonight. So ultimately, I think this is the Knicks series, or not the Knicks, the Hawks series to lose at this point, going up 2-1 with the next game again in Atlanta. The Knicks need this game. They need game 4, and there is still a chance for them to win this series. But I'm going to continue to put my bet on the Hawks because I have not been proven otherwise by the Knicks. They're playing the way I thought they were going to. I still think this could be a 7-game series because the Knicks do have the opportunity if Julius Randle can turn his series around at all. All he has to do is be somewhat efficient, and the Knicks can take some games. It's just a question of whether he can find that, whether RJ Barrett can find that, and whether the role players such as Reggie Bullock, who only had 11 tonight, Taj Gibson, who had 4, whether those guys can find it. Emmanuel Quickley with 4. Just no one can score. They just can't. So those are my thoughts on the games. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about the Clippers taking game 3 from the Mavericks, taking a hold once again in the series, trying to make that comeback. Game 4 for them in Dallas again. What do you think about Kristaps Porzingis' play? What do you think about the Celtics-Nets series? Am I right in saying that the Nets looked vulnerable? Or was this just a one-off fluke game for Tatum with Kyrie struggling? And Knicks-Hawks. Can the Knicks, especially Julius Randle, turn things around? And are the Hawks bound for the second round for the first time in a long time? Let me know all that below. If you made it this far in the video, drop a playoff P for me in the comment section below to give a shout out to Paul George for how well he played tonight. I appreciate you guys watching. I will see you guys later.